It was the camping trip we had all been waiting for. Weeks of meticulous planning had ensured that we had left nothing to chance, and that we would leave the city with nothing but confidence and excitement. It was a long weekend, meaning we had 3 nights to explore the seemingly endless expanse of beauty and nature that was Algonquin Park. 2 of my friends, Jeremy and Jacob, had booked us a camping site deep in the backwoods, nestled right in the middle of the infinite amount of calm lakes and tall oak trees. Every variable that could have an influence on the trip seemed in good shape the afternoon we left. The weather forecast showed nothing but beaming sun and warmth. Traffic was going to be unusually low along the highway. We had packed a variety of meals and snacks, and we had rested well the night previous, giving us the necessary energy to hike and portage across the 3 lakes that stood between us and our site. At 3 p.m., we packed our bags in Jacob's car and hit the road. There were 4 of us: Jeremy, Jacob, Mick, and myself. It was the middle of the summer, so we figured we had until about 9 p.m. to get to our campsite before sundown. As we had to paddle across long lakes, as well as navigate some steep inclines and rocky terrain, we simply couldn't afford to get caught in the dark. As it took 3 hours to get to the main access point, this left us with 3 hours to navigate through the backwoods to our site. In the car, the mood was jovial. We were happy to be done with work for a while and to be able to kick back, drink lots of beer and smoke lots of weed. All this while completely free from the hustle and bustle of civilization. Yo Mick, did you remember to pack the binger? Jacob was listing off items to make sure we had everything, double-checking and triple-checking. Yeah, it's wrapped up in my camping pack. Once we get to the site and set up our stuff, I'll get it out. I was getting giddy. I'm so excited to just be on the lake getting yod and sipping brews. It's been too long. Meanwhile, Jeremy was thinking more responsibly. We just gotta be sure that we have everything set up before we start drinking or anything. Setting up the tent and the tarp over top, creating the hoist so bears don't muck our food, and collecting a good bundle of wood to start the fire. He was right. The last thing we wanted was to be navigating in the dark while drunk or stoned trying to set up our site. Mick kept the mood relaxed. Don't worry about that, we'll have time. We'll split up responsibilities, and it'll all be done pretty quickly. At this point, I could hardly contain myself. Being in the backwoods was certainly an intimidating thought, but my buddies were all experienced, and I didn't have any doubt that we'd be well prepared for the mission that was to come. I fell into a nap the rest of the drive, and woke up just before we got to the access point. When we got there, Jacob and Jeremy quickly got busy loading the canoes with our gear, while Mick and I went to go buy some extra ice for our coolers. When everything was ready to go, we launched ourselves from the beach and began paddling. The mood changed quickly as we realized what we were up against. The wind had picked up considerably, creating choppy waters that took a lot of effort to paddle through. By the time we had reached the second portage, it was nearly sundown. I think we were all getting antsy, but it took Jacob speaking up to get us to make a decision. "Kay, the sun's already starting to set. We're definitely not going to make it to our site tonight. I think we should just take the loss and set up on one of the open sites on the next lake." Jeremy was hesitant. "How do we know they're not all booked? Someone could show up and kick us out, and we really won't want to have to set up twice." I decided to intervene. "It could happen, but there's lots of sites on this lake. I'm with Jacob. I don't think we have a choice. We can't navigate in the dark." We all came to the agreement that we needed to find a site on the next lake, and fast. Oddly enough, we began to paddle through the next lake when we noticed that every site was empty. Being a holiday weekend, this threw us off guard. Something seemed ominous to me, but I let it slide. I attributed the lack of fellow campers to the unexpected high winds. They must have just delayed their trips until the waters calmed down. We found a good site and quickly jumped out of the canoes. Without a word being spoken, we split up and started to prepare for the night. Mick set up the hoist that would keep our food away from any lurking animals. Jeremy went further into the woods to chop some firewood, and Jacob and I started to piece together the tent and tarp. 30 minutes later, we were ready to go. The hoist was prepared a safe hideout from potential thieves. The fire was crackling with great intensity, and the tent and tarp were ready to provide shelter for our weary bones a few hours later. With that, Jacob broke out some sausages to cook over the fire, while we each cracked open a pint and prepared the binger. We were a few beers deep enjoying some good conversation when Jacob interrupted. "I swear I just saw something move not 50 feet into the woods." What the heck? You're just really yoked, man. At worst it's a deer or something. Mick was eager to settle the mood. I'm serious. Whatever it was standing on 2 feet and was definitely not just a deer. It looked about 10 feet tall. Screw that, I'm gonna check it out. I highly doubt there's anything out there. This was classic Jeremy, an expert troll. The 3 of us knew exactly what he wanted to do. He was going to run off into the woods, mess around just long enough to get us anxious and make us try to find him, only for us to return to the campfire with him awaiting our arrival. After 30 minutes, that's exactly what happened. I was the one who broke. I ushered Jacob and Mick to come with me. They grumbled, but eventually followed suit. I figured the sooner we gave in to Jeremy's troll, the sooner we would be back around the campfire enjoying ourselves. If only. We grabbed the flashlights we had packed away and began the hunt. It seemed so ridiculous, but deep down I thought it was sort of fun. After 15 minutes, that fun had worn away into slight desperation. Guys, I don't think even Jeremy would put us through this much. Something's gone wrong. I think he got lost. Yo, Jeremy, are you yod, bud? I yelled half-jokingly, trying not to get too scared. A few seconds after I had finished my sentence, a faint scream broke the silence. I'm not going to lie, I was terrified. I started trembling. We all looked at each other with grave concern before Jacob had decided he'd had enough. He's trolling. He's trolling us. He's probably laughing his rear off right now thinking we're terrified. I'm not going to entertain it anymore. I'm going back to the fire. Soon enough he'll come back and he'll have learned that we aren't going to give in to his antics. Jacob was pretty clear about his intentions. Mick agreed and didn't seem too interested in looking any further. I was so terrified that I just wanted to stay with the other guys. So we started back towards the fire feeling slightly uneasy, but confident that Jeremy would come back in a short while. That's when I made the mistake of turning back and flashing my light into the deep, dark woods. I saw it only for a split second before it dashed behind a tree, but it was unmistakable. Just as Jacob had described, whatever this thing was, it was freakishly tall. That, or we actually were both just yod. I was frozen. I couldn't move. I flashed the light on my arms to see nothing but goosebumps. My mind raced with every possibility, settling on the horror that Jeremy could be gone for good. Finally, I forced myself to speak up. Hold up. I just saw something. I swear I'm not messing around. It was just as you described, Jacob. Tall. Really tall. What if it took Jeremy? This is dumb. I think we're all just drunk and high and in need of sleep. Jeremy is doing his thing, and he'll come back soon. Like we said, he'll probably be back at the fire when we return. Mick was doing his best to keep us calm. If not for him and Jacob, I don't know whether we would have survived that night. When we got back to the fire, it had already died out. But that wasn't the worst part. There was no sign of Jeremy. When I realized he was still gone, my heart sank. I was torn. On one hand, I was fed up with Jeremy's trolling and just wanted to sleep it all off and forget the night ever happened. On the other, I was truly terrified that whatever Jacob and I had seen took Jeremy and murdered him in cold blood. Honestly, I was ready to suggest getting in the canoe and never coming back, but I couldn't leave Jeremy like that, and we wouldn't be able to navigate in the dark anyway. Let's just get in the tent and try to get some rest. Jeremy has a flashlight, and he knows how to get back here. It's only been an hour. He's probably up in a tree listening to music or something, and will come back after we fall asleep to freak us out. We'll laugh it off in the morning and have some breakfast. We've still got 2 days to explore and have a good time, so let's try and relax. Jacob had clearly calmed down a lot, and his reassurance was convincing enough to get me to, reluctantly, agree. On the verge of tears, I joined Mick and Jacob in the tent and decided to try and fall asleep. I don't really know how, but I managed to doze off pretty quickly. I guess the combination of fear, stress, inebriation, and fatigue had taken its toll on me. If only I had been able to sleep through the night. I awoke to the sound of footsteps approaching. My heart started beating faster and faster. Trying to remain calm, my immediate thought was that it must be Jeremy finally back. Nonetheless, I gently poked Jacob's arm, which proved enough to wake him up. In his half-asleep state, he looked up at me. What? All this happened in the space of about 10 seconds, and by then the footsteps were much closer to the tent. Jacob now understood what was going on. I didn't need to explain anything. We stared at each other in abject terror as the footsteps got closer and closer. I could tell we both had the same two ideas. It was either Jeremy finally coming back, or we were about to be brutally murdered by a 10-foot-tall slender man. My heart was pounding as the footsteps were now coming from just outside the tent. "Nice try, bud. We're still awake," Jacob said in a nervous tone. The footsteps immediately stopped. No reply. Complete silence. I thought my heart was going to explode out of my chest. Whatever lay outside was now right beside our tent. For a few more seconds, the most eerie silence remained, and then pandemonium. The scream of a banshee broke the calm of night with the most blood-curdling, ear-piercing sound we'd ever heard. Mick was jolted awake, and the three of us looked at each other thinking these would be our last moments alive. The screaming was incessant. After a while, it started to shake our tent. We couldn't formulate words, nor could any of us muster the courage to move an inch. We waited and waited. After what seemed like hours, the shaking finally stopped. The screaming didn't, but it was getting farther and farther away. To this day, I have no idea what stopped it from entering our tent, but I am eternally grateful for whatever it was. After a few more minutes, the scream was reduced to a faint sound off in the distance. It remained like that throughout the night. None of us said a word to each other. We instead tried to force ourselves back to sleep, but it was to no avail. After several hours, the light of sunrise pierced through the tent. By now, the screaming had stopped. It was Mick who said the first words. "Is it safe now?" "I think so. Let's pack up our stuff and get out of the park. When we arrive back at the main entry point, we'll put in a missing persons report." As much as I wanted to hope Jeremy would be found, part of me knew I'd never see him again. We didn't speak a word while packing up the canoes. It took us only 10 minutes before we were ready to set off. Once in the water, I started to reflect on the events. Still, there were no other campers in sight. That's when I saw it. Squinting my eyes, what looked like a log was bobbing motionless in the water on the other side of the lake. As we paddled closer, it became clear that it wasn't a log. And once we were right up alongside it, I couldn't contain myself. I threw up into the water. We waited in silence for a while before we paddled back to the access point. I will never go camping again.